So, super simple question. Do you go for the Apple HomePod Mini or the Google Nest Audio? Well, I've tried both and I think I know the answer. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Mark Ellis Reviews. Thank you for subscribing if you already have. Just a very quick note, I have created a private Discord server and it's going to be a place to talk about tech and this channel and anything you like basically. It's open at the moment. I'm going to put a link in the description if you want to join it. So now's your chance to jump in, get involved, meet fellow geeks like me and get chatting. So I've had the Apple HomePod Mini for a while now and I've purposely left it a while to give you my full thoughts on it because I think these kind of things need a bit of time to bed in with your life. You know, they're not just speakers, they're home assistants, they do all sorts of clever stuff. However, my friend threw a bit of a spanner into the works recently and said, have you tried the Nest Audio from Google? And I'll be completely honest, I hadn't. I have never owned a Google Home device. I've used them in people's offices and other people's homes, but I've never had my own. And yeah, my mate got in touch and said, look, this is a really interesting product. It's cheaper than the HomePod. It sounds really good. It's got the Google Assistant built in, which is better than Siri. And I thought, well, let's compare it against the HomePod. Price-wise, they are incredibly close actually. The HomePod Mini is £99. The Nest Audio is, at the moment, it's actually $79.99, but normally it is $89.99. However, there's a few things to bear in mind. Now, the HomePod Mini at £99 is, I think, shockingly good value from Apple, but that is taking into account the classic Apple tax. If you buy a phone from Apple, you pay more from it. If you buy a laptop from Apple, you pay more for it. And you can always get something better, usually, and cheaper elsewhere. So Apple tax is definitely a thing, but they are one of the most successful companies in the world, and they have a huge army of fans. So £99 for a smart speaker from Apple is actually fantastic value, just off the bat in that respect. And actually, if we look back at the history of the HomePod, and we go right back to the original great big HomePod, which I've never owned. I've heard it, it sounds fantastic, but I've never owned it because I could never justify spending what was once £319 on a home speaker that included Siri, which was pretty terrible. The HomePod Mini is following something which was largely regarded as a bit of a flop. Now the Nest Audio, by comparison, is £10 cheaper, £20 cheaper at the moment if you go and buy it now. So I thought it best to look at the value that you get from these devices. That's the most important thing. And I'm going to look at four things. I'm going to look at the design, the sound, the digital assistant, which is obviously Siri and the Google Assistant, and then how it fits into your life. Design-wise, the HomePod Mini, I love the design of it actually. It's this little kind of rugged ball that it feels that strong. You could throw it at the wall and not cause any damage to anything apart from the wall. I wouldn't suggest you try that, but it does feel classic Apple, well-made and just rugged. And it has this lovely kind of fabric mesh finish, which is just, again, pleasing to hold if you pick it up on the rare occasion that you might do that. And it just looks like a typical Apple premium device. There's two options, space grey and white. Again, Apple aren't particularly adventurous with their colours these days, but you know, I think for a speaker, that's probably about as crazy as you want to get, really. And it has this kind of transparent surface on the top, which the Siri lights shine through whenever you bring Siri into action. But basically, it slots nicely into any room. I've got it on my desk at the moment. I've placed it in other areas of my house, and it always looks good. The Nest Audio, by comparison, is actually quite similar. They've used the same kind of mesh fabric finish, and it feels like a really tight device. Now that should be expected. These are speakers, they can't have any flex in them, otherwise they'll vibrate and sound horrendous. So it shouldn't be of any surprise that both the Nest Audio and the HomePod Mini feel very tight and well made. And yeah, Google has really done a good job, I think, with the Nest Audio. I think what you like out the two in terms of the design is very much a personal preference. It's an aesthetics thing. It doesn't have any impact really on the sound. They both feel identically well made, really. Only thing I'm going to say is the prevalence of these damn touch sensitive buttons that you get on devices like this these days. So both the HomePod Mini and the Nest Audio, they both have touch sensitive controls, and you just have to brush your finger on them and they'll either play, pause, or increase or decrease the volume. That's fine, and it's useful if you just need to tap it and get on with your life. However, if you pick up these devices, which, okay, you won't do that very often, it's very easy to accidentally press them. I'm a much bigger fan of physical mechanical buttons because you have much more control over when you do and when you don't press them. It's a small gripe really, and obviously these are designed to be used with your voice, but it's just worth mentioning. So sound. Now sound is really important to me. I love sound. I love a good pair of headphones, and I love a good sounding hi-fi, and I love my 5.1 home cinema system. However, I am realistic with sound, and if I buy a device that is as small as the HomePod Mini or as the Nest Audio, I don't have huge expectations for it. Now, if we look on Apple's website, they fascinate me. So they waffle on about boundary pushing computational audio and 360-degree audio. I understand what the 360-degree audio thing means. It means you can put it in the room, and it doesn't matter where you put it in the room, it's going to sound good, basically, because it bounces things off walls and does clever stuff with the speakers that are in that little thing. The Nest Audio, interestingly, by comparison, just says that it has a woofer, tweeter and tuning software. Now that's exactly what the HomePod has, but Google are less Apple about it. The net result for both of these devices is that they just sound pretty good. You know, I didn't turn the HomePod Mini on, for example, like some reviewers have, and sort of step back in amazement and kind of shake my head about this incredible sound that was coming from it, because it's not that experience at all. I have purchased something recently which is like that. Stay tuned, make sure you subscribe. I'll be doing a little review of that in the new year. But both the Nest and the HomePod Mini sound pretty good. They haven't got deep bass, they haven't really got piercing highs, you know, they're just fairly well balanced overall, and they just sound like they should sound given their size. Now, out of the two, the HomePod Mini just pips it for me sound-wise. It's a bit more refined. The Nest Audio sounds a little bit boxy. By that, I mean it just sounds a bit like it needs a bit of EQing out of the box, whereas the HomePod Mini doesn't. It sounds pretty good straight away. Google does give you plenty of options for EQing the Nest Audio, and I had to play with it, and you can get it to sound pretty good actually. But for me, that's a step you shouldn't have to take. What I do like about Apple's audio capabilities these days, whether it be the HomePod or their laptops or their iPads or iPhones, they always sound pretty good out of the box. They seem to get the EQ pretty much spot on. So again, if you're not fussed about that and you don't really care too much about what it sounds like, or you don't mind fiddling around with the EQ, both of these devices are going to give you the sound that you expect from such a small device. There's no noticeable distortion on both of them. I've cranked them both up pretty loud, and yeah, it's a nice pleasing sound actually at high volumes. However, it's not a high volume that is going to allow you to rock your house during a house party. You know, you're still going to need something bigger for that if you want to create something more impressive. But yeah, they both sound as you'd expect them to sound. They're pretty good, you know, and I just think the HomePod just pips it if you're really into sound quality, and this is very important to you. The HomePod is just beyond the Nest Audio in that respect. Now the Assistant, the big thing about these speakers is the fact that they include assistants. Now this is a completely subjective thing. I know people who love Siri, I know people who love Alexa, I know people who love the Google Assistant. However, just to give you some of my experience, I still think personally that Alexa is streets ahead. I think if I ever had to choose between any of these assistants, I would choose Alexa. Alexa just seems to give me the responses I want. She doesn't tend to go too often to Google to get what she needs. I lose count the number of times I ask Siri something and the response you get back is, here's what I found on Google. That, to me, is just a failure immediately. Now, just a quick thing on the capabilities these speakers have in terms of recognizing your voice. They're both fantastic. The Nest Audio and the HomePod Mini will pick your voice up even when they're playing music loud. They will pick you up in a very noisy environment. I've tested it pretty extensively, and you've got no worries there. They're both on a level playing field. So it really does come down to the assistant you prefer. And if you are in Apple's ecosystem, Siri makes sense. However, if you're on the fence, I'll be honest, I think the Google Assistant is slightly better. When Apple launched the HomePod Mini, they had this massive play on the family capabilities, and that included two things which I think are quite interesting. One of them was the fact that it can recognize multiple voices. So if you're in a big family or just a couple of you in the house, for example, it will know which one you are when you start talking to it. That's useful from a privacy perspective, and I know that it can read out text messages and that kind of thing. I think that's interesting. I like the fact that it can be a device for everyone. I think that's far more interesting than something which is just uniquely tuned to your own voice. The other thing the HomePod Mini offers is a thing called intercom. And intercom is basically a feature where from any other Apple device, you can send a message to your HomePod. And it works brilliantly, actually. You can do it from your car in CarPlay. You can do it obviously from your phone, from your iPad, anything you want that is Apple made, obviously. And it's genuinely a useful feature. It's one of those things that you think might be gimmicky at first, but actually it's genuinely handy. And now the Nest Audio, by comparison, doesn't have those kind of features really. So if the intercom thing excites you, the HomePod Mini is the one to go for. Now the other thing to bear in mind is handoff. I thought this would be a bit gimmicky with the HomePod Mini, however, it really isn't. So basically what you can do with the HomePod Mini, if you're playing music on your phone or something on your phone, you can basically motion your phone towards the HomePod. It doesn't really have to touch it, I don't think. You can just put it nearby and it will magically transfer whatever it is that's playing on your iPhone to the HomePod. And when you first do it, it's one of those things that you think, that is magic, it's classic Apple magic. And then it becomes increasingly useful. And the way I use it, for example, there's certain things, again, that the HomePod doesn't do. So I can't play in the UK BBC radio by asking Siri to do that. Instead, I play it on my phone and then just very quickly hand the phone over to the HomePod and it transfers the audio to the speaker. It's genuinely useful, really handy. Now you can do something similar with the Nest Audio, but it relies on Chromecast, which is built into it. So there's a bit more fiddling around involved in that. You need to use the app if you're using an iPhone. You don't, in fairness, with an Android phone, but it's a few extra steps. And I think the way that Apple have implemented this handoff between the iPhone and the HomePod Mini, it's just so intuitive. It's the most obvious way to do it. It feels natural. So yeah, I was really impressed by that. So the big question, which one should you buy? The HomePod Mini or the Nest Audio? I think this comes down to two things. I think the first one is the obvious thing, which is the platform you prefer. And the second thing is whether or not you use Spotify. So the first one, platform. Are you an Apple person? Yep. Get the HomePod Mini. Simple. If you're a Google person, get the Nest Audio. If you use Spotify, there's something really important to bear in mind, which is the fact that the HomePod Mini does not have Spotify natively built in. So by that, I mean that you can't say, hey, play whatever, and it will play whatever it is on Spotify. It doesn't do that because, well, we don't know why. I won't pontificate as to why that's the case, but basically you cannot have Spotify playing natively on the HomePod Mini. The way around that is, as I mentioned earlier with the handoff feature, is to play something on your phone and then on Spotify and then hand it over by touching the phone near the HomePod Mini, which again is a great feature, but it would be a shame to keep doing that if you're a Spotify user. It's far easier to ask the device to play it for you. Now, by comparison, the Nest Audio has Spotify compatibility straight out of the box. So you just connect it up to your Spotify account and away you go. So if you're a Spotify user, I would get the Nest Audio. Depending on which platform you use, pick the speaker that best fits that platform. It's that simple. Because there's no defining feature between these two in terms of design, audio capabilities, or if I'm honest, even the assistant, as much as Google Assistant is admittedly better than Siri, there's not a huge amount in it, if I'm completely honest. It won't make a massive difference to your everyday life. It does seem to suggest that we've reached a point with a lot of these devices where the differentiating factors between the two brands are getting smaller and smaller. It really does come down to which platform you prefer. I'd love to be able to sit here and say the Nest Audio has got stonking sound over the HomePod Mini, or the HomePod Mini is just so much better built than the Nest Audio, or it has this feature which the Nest Audio does not have. That just isn't the case. I think a little bit like smartphones these days, we've kind of reached this precipice of functionality and design, and the people behind these devices are so smart, but they're all so smart. They're all doing amazing things and they all copy each other, and that's what happens, I suppose. We are down to the point now where it is the platform that matters, and it's the little things like Spotify integration that are going to swing your decision. But yeah, in summary, they both sound like they should sound. They will not blow you away, but they sound perfectly good. Price-wise, the Nest Audio does pip it, in fairness. If you're going to buy lots of these, then a Nest Audio setup is going to cost you less overall. However, if you prefer Alexa and you want a bigger speaker, I would recommend hanging around and watching my review of the Echo Studio. In the meantime, as always, thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Remember to join me on Discord, and I will see you next time.